But to get us going, I think it's very interesting for us to understand the landscape of organic and natural products. So Monique, I'd like to come to you, and perhaps you can lay us, what is the landscape for organic and natural products within the Middle East or GCC region? Monique?
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Dr. Ashraf. So organic packaged food in the Middle East and Africa is valued at almost $820 million in 2021, with forecast CAGR of 7% to reach $1.1 billion in 2026. And consumers are seeking out organic foods for environmental reasons as well as health concerns, as organic food contains no GMOs and has no pesticide and antibiotic exposure. The availability of organic food is increasing significantly as many companies roll out organic versions of traditional offerings to gain extra margins, as organic products are still perceived as premium, and higher prices continue to be a barrier that hampers growth in this region, in many regions as well as this region. And organic packaged food is the fastest growing category among the different health and wellness categories in 2021. And it is perceived as sustainable and growing, as the importance of environmental concerns is increasing. And the organic are also expected to be key drivers of the health and wellness market and to show the highest growth rate over the forecast period. And we also have asked our consumers across the Middle East and Africa region. We have the Voice of the Consumer survey, health and wellness, and we asked them which factors are the reasons why they are into organic food. So the first one at 58% is health, because again, there are no GMOs and no pesticides. It's perceived as a healthier option compared to regular food. And then second is at 50% is food safety, because of the verification of different certification bodies. So consumers have that confidence that the organic food that they are consuming is safe. And then third is environmental concerns at 47%, and because it saves the planet from soil and water pollution, as it does not use conventional agricultural chemical fertilizers.
Excellent. That's a lot of information to pack there. And yes, it seems the industry is certainly growing. And I think it'd be interesting for us to get a feel from the ground. I mean, Suraj mentioned Joytrons have been here in the region for a very, very long time. Kirti, what have you seen from a retail perspective on the growth of organic and natural products? And what do you think are the key drivers for your target segment? Kirti?
I think organic foods, when we look at our categories, we usually categorize it into what we call the health section. So I think one of the things that started off very, very early was the sugar-free. The sugar-free movement was one of the first ones to come up. Sugar-free, or let's say suitable for diabetes, and all those things. And then it has sort of rolled on like into organic and keto and diet and too many things that have come up. And so now we have a full gamut of let's say organic health foods that we have in our supermarkets. So if you maybe walk into our supermarkets, you'll see a complete separate section of what we call the health foods. Of course, organic foods also fall within that. And what Monique was saying is exactly right. This is what the consumer looks for. The kind of certification that goes into organic foods per se is quite good enough for a consumer to say, okay, when I'm picking up this kind of product, I have all the backing behind it, and in terms of its quality, in terms of where it's coming from, how it's grown. So I think that is one of the major factors why people are actually going into organic foods. Having said that, it has grown quite fast and quite exponentially. It is still a very minuscule part of our entire trade, because it is still small, but yes, people are moving up into organic, and they're moving up into organic through all categories. Like I think one of the best things to happen, maybe Mike will tell us more about it, is how organic fruit and veg, how organic fresh produce or organic eggs, through that category. Of course, it has to come through, let's say, rice, flour, pulses, biscuits, and when it starts going through all the categories, it's when it's going to become even larger. But per se, even today, it is quite small. But yes, we have one of the biggest categories in town. If you walk into our supermarkets, you can always see that we have one of the biggest categories of organic foods, within our neighborhood stores. So on the ground, I think yes, it is increasing, and we do have plans of opening new stores. So whenever we are planning our new stores, we make sure that we have more space within those stores, for this category.
That's really interesting, because you're talking about a segment that is quite small but growing quite rapidly. Yes. And you touched upon the important aspect of fruits and vegetables. So I'd like to come to you, Mike. I mean, your company is very well known for organic and natural. I mean, how have you seen the growth of this sector? And what do you think are the drivers that have contributed to this growth and will continue to assist its growth further?
So I think, just building on what Kirti said, I think the first thing is it's gone mainstream. So historically, if we were to go back 5 or 6 years and use UAE as an example, typically organic produce tended to be distributed by specialist stores. So it was a specialist store product for a specialist set of consumers rather than for general consumers. And what we've seen now, if we look across the marketplace and we look at all the major retailers, as Kirti has referenced, when you go into, whether it's a Joytrons, whether you go into a Spinach, whether you go into Union Corp or Koffel, you have full organic offerings.
Yeah.
So that signals demand. It signals that people are interested. And that interest is for all the reasons that Kirti talked about. So it's predominantly driven by health concern. And I think we saw during COVID, with the pandemic, we actually saw people start to internalize and focus more on health. So that focus on health wasn't just about protecting yourself from COVID. It was more around, okay, what else do I need to do to stimulate my health and well-being? So naturally that entered, that was a key driver in terms of people, starting to reassess diet. Fruit and vegetables, in my opinion, has always been one of the entry points into organic, because, it's product at its nascent stage. So I think, from my perspective, what I see is that I think fruit and veg is often an entry point into consumers starting to adopt organic produce. But what we've seen with the major retailers moving more into that space, the level and range of products that are now available in UAE stores is incredible. I recently, a couple of months ago, took a trip to Netherlands to do a market study just to kind of benchmark where UAE is against the Netherlands. And you'd think Netherlands as a mass producer of organic produce would be up there. But, can honestly say, visiting a lot of the major supermarkets, that UAE's range of product available on the shelf in supermarkets, is as sophisticated as any of the major European countries these days.
Thank you. And I think you've touched on a number of very important aspects. I will talk about the COVID aspect in a few moments, but you talked about how it's become mainstream. And I think that's a great development. And when we look at Jackys, which is one of the brands that we associate with electronics retailing, so we are I was actually quite surprised that it's moved into the organic space. So Guru, one of the things that I find interesting, and perhaps I'd like to know more about, is what made a very well-established electronics retailer move into this space?
See, as a group, we have multiple divisions other than electronics as well. So, as you know, Jackys is one of the largest reseller of Samsung brand in the Middle East. And we also have multiple divisions, which is not being tagged as Samsung or retailer. But again, still we have the multiple divisions running side by side. And we saw a gap in, I'm from organic, a bit of experience, and we saw a gap in UAE, where we thought that we can fit into this industry. And we got into this industry, and then after that, we saw there's a gap where we can fill the I mean, we can actually educate people of healthy living style here. And that's where we come in picture.
Actually, I'm quite interested. What gap did you see? And what's the gap that you are filling that others did not see?
See, it's not that only we have seen. It's only thing what we have seen, like, as rightly said, Mr. Kirti, like, this product, the ranges, I mean, the organic term is always portrayed as like an elite food, like, you say. But
Right.
Since I am from India, so a lot of fun, it is where I see a lot of organic brands which is coming in the market, and the price has been so high, which can be cut down and we can make it. And we saw a B segment, which is we can still they're striving to reach to the organic, where they want to live their lifestyle and healthy lifestyle, but they're not able to reach there. So this is where we saw a gap. Why can't we come in between, and we can supply these food products or organic food range at affordable prices to this segment, where they can also consume, like, that's where we saw the gap, and B segment is a huge gap in the market.
And that's actually very interesting. So you saw a gap in terms of price points, and you saw a gap in terms of the kind of products that people want to buy.
Exactly.
Which is very interesting. I think that's amazing. Now, Mike talked about pandemic. In fact, that's a big elephant in the room. It's still there. So I'd like to go back to you, Mike, and look at how have you, within Ripe, changed your post-pandemic strategy, and how have you capitalized on the post-pandemic opportunities that you touched upon? Mike?
Look, so I've been running Ripe for the last 5 years, and I would actually say that our strategy implemented pre-pandemic, but ultimately we saw the shift to mainstream. So historically, Ripe was a small independent retailer. We weren't a supermarket, but we were doing farm shops. We had an e-commerce proposition, but we weren't really that integrated into supermarkets, but really understanding that consumers were going towards supermarkets, where we focused the development of our businesses to make sure that actually our strategy is to be the consolidator of choice into the market for organic fresh produce. So we directly source from 12 countries now. So we follow products, through season to different countries. And where we provide value is by bringing in bulk in an efficient way, and then distributing in the smaller quantities to the various supermarkets chains. So by doing that frequently, we keep it fresh. As Kirti had referenced earlier, organic as a category it's still nascent compared to the overall food supply into market. So by Ripe playing that role, more often than not, we're able to achieve container size volumes rather than small individual air shipments. And in doing so, there's another environmental opportunity that we're doing, which is reducing the carbon footprint of reducing the cost of bringing product into market. But I should also say as well, we're massive advocates as well of growing local and supporting local during the months of the year when organic produce can be grown locally. So we partner with a number of amazing farms, and I would reiterate, in UAE there's some really, really amazing growers that are meeting all the principles of what you'd expect from an organic grower or producer.
I mean, actually, that's very, very true, because also we work in terms of export promotion. And one of the things that we also promote is how people do not appreciate the vast volumes of products that we actually grow here. It's not just dates, but from aubergines, strawberries, blueberries, etc. So it's a whole range of products. But I'd like to move over to you, Kirti. How have you, as Joytron, which has traditionally been a brick and mortar establishment, how did you change your post-pandemic strategy as far as organic and natural products is concerned?
I don't think we have changed much in that. In fact, we have added more to it, because there's one buzzword that we just missed out during the pandemic, which was going around, is immunity. So immunity played a very big role in the minds of the people. People were thinking, how do I get myself immunized through various let's say things that they could catch. So I think that also played a lot on the minds of the consumers. So like I said, when e-commerce when e-commerce sort of doubled, during the pandemic, it has remained there currently. And within that, again, our the kind of sales mix that we have within our categories at the brick and mortar store is almost the same that we have on e-commerce, except for a very few notable categories, which anybody can guess, like water, soft drinks, eggs, and some kind of let's say a few fresh produce SKUs which move a bit more on e-commerce. Otherwise, by and large, we are selling almost the same kind of let's say mix within our e-commerce and also in our stores. So I don't think we've changed much post the pandemic, or maybe whatever you call it, the current era through which we are going through.
Thank you. I'll come on the topic of e-commerce in a minute, because that's something very, very important, and I'll just deal with that in a separate question. But I like your idea about how post-pandemic people are more aware about how they can use organic products as a way of protecting themselves in terms of antioxidants or whatever, and how they eat certain products. And that's been a strategy of many companies. Guru, I mean, coming over to your particular area of activity, how has your business changed its post-pandemic strategy? And it's also quite interesting because you were established just before the pandemic, right, Guru?
Just about we started when the pandemic started. So initially we had challenges to launch the brands and list them into retailers and list them on online platform. That is the time where a lot of online players came online. Then it was a little challenges, but somehow we managed to get into the retail, and somehow we managed to get even online platforms like Amazon, Gibsons, and everything. And we saw a good the response from online, definitely because of the pandemic. And during the course, after first phase or second phase of pandemic, things changed for us. And it was a launch time for us. It's just a beginning for us. So it almost 6 to 8 months it took for us to introduce the brand in the internet. And now we have seen a good growth. When the pandemic almost getting over, or the world started opening and the people started coming out to the open air, we saw a good growth in the sales. And because of pandemic, as you said, people are now educated. They know what to buy and what to eat. And in this time also, we understood what exactly is the wellness, what buyer is looking for, which made it easy for us to actually identify what product we can give it to them on the shelf, and what product we can launch, import. And that's actually a good education for us in the last 2 years when you look at the wellness segment. And it has, sorry?
No, I was going to say, it's actually very interesting because during the pandemic, natural and organic product growth was 3 times that of conventional products.
Exactly. People are educated for whatever reason, and so the sales have gone up compared to what it used to be, generic. Just 2 years back, what the organic sales was there. Now in this past, because of 2 years, the sales gone up.
I can believe that. Monique, can you give us a general landscape in terms of what companies have been doing post-pandemic? And also, one of the questions from the audience is, taking into account there's always a premium on organic. Will there always be a premium? Do you believe?
It's for me, right?
You can tell us, Guru, as well. Do you believe there'll always be a premium?
No, it won't be a premium, because see, there are a lot of innovations happening, technologies coming in, and a lot of players are coming in, a lot of brands are coming in. You talk about private labeling, you talk about the brands, which is back in India, lots of brands are coming in. The organic industry has also become very competitive. So, and at the same time,
sorry, Guru, just on that point now, I think we talk about premium, but the industry is a function of cost structure, yeah? So we have to recognize that organic farming will always be more expensive than conventional farming.
Yeah. We're into organic farming. I'm not into farming, so I'm talking about dry foods,
Sure. But it's important that still dry foods comes from commodities as well, and it's really important that we don't drive the industry zero-sum game, okay? Because in the end of the day, we need to protect the farmers at the back that are growing crops in a way that meets organic standards, and we need to make sure that those standards, okay, are understood from consumer beyond health, and that the organic farming method has benefits to the environment as well. So sorry to cut across you there, but I think it's really important that we stop talking about organic as a premium product. We need to make sure that everyone understands that cost structure is a function of every stage of the supply chain, okay? And that to be honest, the only premium is where you get into branding, and that is an area where there's potential to look at, you know, distribution chain. But I have a strong reaction when we talk about organic as a premium item, because that indicates that people are levying additional margin onto product in order to capture consumer sentiment. And I think that it's a different challenge. It's around volumes are small, cost structure is more difficult to work with, and that's why we're in a situation where it is more expensive on the shelf.
In that case, Mike, I think you've raised a very important issue, and I'll come back to you in a minute, Monique. But I think the really important issue is that, I mean, we know that the sheer nature of organic, the sheer low scales of economies implies that it's going to be expensive. But should this be made more clear? Should we have an awareness to the consumer that, you know, you're not being overcharged, you're actually being charged fairly for a different type of product? You know, it's not comparing an apple with an apple, but it's comparing an apple with an organic apple, which has a very different cost structure. I mean, should the industry not work on the awareness raising aspect?
Yeah. I think you've hit the nail on the head. It needs more updates. So I think in this market, UAE, to be honest, there isn't enough understanding of the holistic picture of organic. The focus tends to be of health, or the connotation that it's a premium product. But I think you have to go understand, you know, that from the kind of the farmer to the community to, you know, the transportation methods to really understand why. And I don't think there's enough focus in this market on promoting those values to the end consumer, and therefore it's lost and therefore not necessarily understood. So just to be clear, you know, I think everyone on this call is working to make organic cheaper, because in doing so, that's one of the things that's going to help adoption. So it's this virtuous cycle. But to answer your question directly, we need a lot more participation at government, at the supermarket, at player level, to help customers understand why organic is more expensive, so that customers have a different parameter to assess that choice around how they spend money.
Sorry,
yes,
Dr.
please.
You know, if you don't mind, I would like to add something to this point. You know, I'll give you an example. We work with a brand called 24 Mantra in India. Okay, and this is a brand, you know, which produces crops, you know, with the farmers. So they have a backward integration with the farmers. And in India, because, you know, many farmers have used a lot of pesticides over the years, they have to keep it empty for 3 years at least, so that, you know, the farmland becomes organic again, and then they start doing that. Now, what this company does is, you know, it actually helps the farmers and pays them, you know, like a salary for all those 3 years, and that's how, you know, they have invested into that. And then they say, okay, all this crop, you know, it all has to come to this brand called 24 Mantra. Not only that, they are so good that they have also taken care of the schools and the children's schooling and all, you know. So in that way, organic will turn out to be a bit more expensive than the normal one, because the kind of farming that is done is quite different, you know. So but yes, you know, I think what Mike is saying is that it should not be overly priced. So what we have seen in FMCG, of course, we are looking at packaged products. Unlike Mike, when he sees that fresh produce, which might be the raw material to make, you know, things that are packaged. So, you know, when we are looking at the packaged stuff, we are looking at around 15 to 20% hike in the prices, you know, from a conventional product. And as long as it is 15 to 20%, you know, higher than a conventional product, people don't mind paying that extra, because they know what they're getting against it. They're getting, you know, they're getting a better product, they're getting a healthy product, they're getting products which are environmental friendly, and, you know, they are also adding to the safety of water, like so that there are no pesticides in the water. So all this put together, I think consumers are ready to pay that extra money. But yes, I agree with Mike that somewhere down the line, maybe government bodies also should step in to see how this this entire thing can come down. But of course it cannot be just the UAE government. It has to be so many governments in the world where these things are produced. How organic farming can actually become the mainstream farming rather than being a niche farming.
I mean, I think as we move towards ESG and ESG compliance, I think this will become a natural thing because obviously from 2025, companies will have to report their ESG compliance, and banks will not be lending to non-ESG compliant companies. So I think that itself would feed through the chain. But coming back to you, Monique, how do you see the growth of organic sector? And do you also agree with what's been said by Mike and also by Kirti in terms of that the customers are willing to pay 15 to 20% higher for a product that is socially value enhancing, especially the story that Kirti talked about, how it's not only about the product, but there's a whole story behind this products that they're actually supporting communities.
Okay, sure. So first of all, we're looking at the consumers to have more realization or more consciousness about health concerns. And if we talk about health concerns, previously we think about more on the physical health, but now especially with the COVID pandemic, we are also looking at the mental health. Like, are these products also something that would benefit the mental health, as well as sleep, gut health, and all of this holistic lifestyle that we're looking. So we expect the organic products to also be positioned towards these other types of health and wellness trends. And then also the clean label. So for example, for the packaged food categories, even if it's an organic food, if there are too many ingredients that are not recognizable to the consumers, then it would also affect them, and they would prefer labels or ingredients that they can pronounce, that are they understand and are recognizable to them. So second is premium positioning, which has been already tackled. So yes, there will always be a premium pricing towards organic food, because as mentioned, the farming involved would require more resources financially. And so we're seeing, for example, in other countries, in other governments, that the governments are supporting these farmers, supporting this agricultural people by, for example, subsidizing land, subsidizing the organic the organic fertilizers that are needed for these farms. And then, so what's happening with what's happening is that another opportunity for this premium positioning is with private labels. So it's something that we've seen grow also with the pandemic, not only with organic food, but across the whole retailing system, I would say, especially with food, as people are, especially during the pandemic, when we saw all of this, when we had some people who lost their jobs or had to take pay cuts, and so they had to quite sort of balance, like on the one hand, they need to consume healthy products to boost their immunity, to make sure that they do not contract the virus. But but on the other hand, they also need to be more economical with their finances, if they suffered from the economic recession. So another opportunity would be private labels. If we can see, for example, in Carrefour, there have been more brands, or there have been more options for Carrefour Bio, for instance, which is the organic range of Carrefour. Yeah, and there will always, and it's also like a psychological thing among consumers that if something is more expensive, and of course, considering that there are like the safety standards and there are labels, for example, of organic and how, for example, the products or food are manufactured, then they would think of it as something more, as something healthier, or something that they can trust. And a specific example for that would be baby food. So for when we went into the pandemic, the baby food organic range boomed as well, because parents thought or were more conscious about the safety of their children, of their babies, and made sure that they are providing them the right nutrition, providing them the safe food for their children, even though the prices are higher compared to regular baby food. Another thing is on convenience. So we are seeing that there is also a huge opportunity for the convenience trend in organic food. So for example, for on-the-go food, for example, snack bars, for instance. So we usually associate it with something that's not exactly healthy, but now there are organic versions for it, because it also ties with the notion on premium indulgence. So for instance, people still want to eat their snacks, even though it's most of the time it's regarded as unhealthy. So another way to address that is to introduce or to launch or to educate people about organic snacks that are positioned as organic as well. Yeah.
Now that's a lot of information that you unpack, but I mean, you touched on a number of very important issues. I really like the idea that consumers are willing to make a choice for organic and natural products because they see value in it, right?
Yes, yes.
And we certainly see that with the data. But the second interesting aspect is convenience. And I think one of the interesting things that we have seen in terms of convenience in the post-pandemic period is the growth of e-commerce. In fact, in the first 8 weeks of the pandemic, the growth in e-commerce was equivalent to the previous 8 years, right? So there certainly has been a tremendous growth. Now, Kirti, you mentioned earlier that your business has grown in terms of online and e-commerce. Would you like to tell us more about that, please?
So, if you're looking at it from a percentage value, we used to do around 5 to 6% of our sales used to come from e-commerce pre-pandemic, and during the pandemic it rose to around 12 to 13% of our total sales. So which means that actually it has more than doubled during the pandemic. So we had to scale up all our operations on the e-commerce side, and which we did very successfully. And like I said, it has remained there, because traditionally we used to be one of the very few supermarkets who used to do home deliveries. So we knew that model of how to deliver the last mile delivery was always mastered by us. So we just have to scale it up.
Mike, have you seen the same thing in your sector?
Absolutely, and I'd say beyond just traditional e-commerce, I think we've seen a tremendous growth in QCommerce as well. So what had started out as takeaway meal delivery through the big aggregators such as Talabat, Zomato, etc. All those players have moved into quick commerce, along with some more established incumbents that were already in markets such as InstaShop and El Grocer. So from a fruit and vegetable perspective, we've seen significant growth in that area, because one of the interesting things around convenience is, whilst consumers wanted to go and touch and feel product in traditional supermarkets, particularly fruits and veg, when it comes to midweek through the week, they may have run out of a certain product and they don't want to have to go to the supermarket. So QCommerce has filled a very, very important role in the market in allowing customers to access those fresh items that they want there and then, rather than 5 or 6 days time later.
But also, I mean, if they're anything like me, they also want diversity without the need to go to X number of different stores to get what they want, right?
Absolutely. And I think that trend is also replicated in the fact, if we look at traditional brick and mortar retail, we've seen a massive expansion in the number of localized stores through the pandemic. So I'm sure Kirti would have an opinion on Joytrons' growth in number of stores, but most of the major modern trade retailers have been expanding in bricks and mortar in order to get closer to the customer. One, to be integrated into the consumer, into the community, but I suspect also to be able to allow aggregators to offer their product to key communities around UAE and further abroad.
Guru, does your business do e-commerce? And if so, how is that?
Not yet. We are depending on the third party online, and we have our Amazon and Noon. But again, the sale has really gone up because once we launched it, so we are still adding up our brands in many other online platforms. So we are signing up with them. So we are in fact, we are in almost all the online platform as of now. But initially,
so it's a very different strategy. So your strategy is using established online platforms and then just to ride on their waves.
Exactly.
Right?
I mean, yeah.
Okay, excellent. So in fact, that's been a wonderful discussion, and we're we're back on time at 3:50 to have a short 5-minute break, I believe, and then we'll come back again after a break for the second half of this session. Welcome to the second half of the session, and we're carrying on with our discussion. And I think there are a couple of points that were raised in the first half, which I'd like to return to. And one of them, I think, Monique, you mentioned, was the idea about labeling and packaging, and the idea that the customer needs to know what's natural and organic, right? In that sort of sense, I think we have the issue that how can we create confidence in the mind of the customer as to what is natural and what is organic? Monique?
Yes, definitely. So we do have already the global certifications for organic. So that's a very effective way of ensuring that these products are really organic, because it went through a very rigorous standardization process. So and I think but the thing is, it's not as Mike mentioned earlier. There's still a gap on educating the consumers on on the benefits of the organic food. So that's something that, for example, this webinar is all about, and the different stakeholders from governments, manufacturers, retailers, as well as consumers themselves need to talk about more and educate fellow consumers.
Yeah, that's certainly true. Now, one of the issues is that in the whole value chain, we have issues about if there's any break in this organic system. And now, Mike, I'd like to go back to you, because I suppose you are at the very beginning of the value chain, dealing with fruits and vegetables and basically the raw material. How do you think modern technology, perhaps blockchain technology, can drive or create a greater assurance? Mike?
So from my perspective, I think, broader to say, I think there's further work required in the space, particularly when you're dealing with the raw commodities. Yes, we have, there's a really strong framework in place in UAE and the other countries of GCC for monitoring organic. We have very thorough regulatory standards, and there's lots of bodies in place to monitor that. But we need a means of also completing what I would describe as weights and measures, counterbalance checks. So where I feel that blockchain could be used is a way of basically reconciling country of origins, product, and quantities that it's viable to produce organically, to make sure as product moves through the value chain, the product the customer ends up buying is the product that they're actually intending to buy. And the two biggest areas of fraud that we are aware that still permeates the market is misrepresentation of country of origin on product. Okay, and secondly is either partial substitution of organic product with conventional and or full substitution. Okay, so the types of fraud that that we're up against is potentially where farmers are producing, let's say, 500 kilogram of organic certified product, but they sell into market 1,000 kilogram. So it is a concern, it is a problem, and it's something that everyone that's involved in the value chain needs to be aware of and support in tackling, because ultimately it does two things. Most importantly, it cheats the consumer, which is the thing, and the other thing is it creates a false bottom in terms of understanding of price, which linked into the conversation that Kirti, Guru, and myself have had, is that understanding of price is critical. So if you have market manipulation, then the authentic players that are doing things correctly are the ones that are penalized. And ultimately, it's a zero-sum game where no one makes money, and therefore there's no incentive for our longevity in the industry.
But I suppose you really need this whole tracing from farm to fork, right? And I think that's 100%. What technology really offers. I mean, I think blockchain technology offers a viable solution, a low-cost viable solution, where the consumer can actually look at the barcode or the batch number of something and know exactly which farm this came from, or the product came from, and what's the history of that farm, how has it been farmed, what are the neighboring areas. I think there's a lot of information that you can get.
Sure. So, and look, on this point, we actually, ironically, we need it to be adopted in conventional farming first and conventional products. So there's examples of the technologies being rolled out for things like olive oil, where, there tends to be lots of cases where olive oil is mixed rather than true from source. So if we could get whole-scale adoption of these standards in conventional, where the volume actually supports the cost investment, that would help to bring integrity around things such as the makeup of product, the country of origin, and with the conventional volumes, we'd see scale to warrant the investment. That beyond that, then actually that could trickle down into organic. And if it was available in organic, we would then see the true benefits of protecting those farmers that are doing things the right way, and the people involved in the value chain as well that are doing things the right way.
I mean, I also work in the halal space, and we see it in the halal space.
Yeah.
Because you have different ways of slaughter, you have different, and the value chain is essentially the same, but the consumer wants a level of confidence. So you see this whole tracking and tracing process in the halal sector. So I think there's a lot of technology and knowledge that can be transferred from the conventional sector, in this case halal, to organic. But I think one of the things that I find very interesting is that consumers don't only want organic and natural, but they want organic and natural plus. And I'd like to go back to what you said, Kirti, and the example you gave of that particular situation in India. Do you find that a consumer wants to know the story behind the product and not just the product by itself? And this may require a strengthening of supplier relations. So you're not buying products from some abstract or unknown supplier, but a supplier where you actually have long-term relationships and where you actually invest in those value suppliers. Kirti?
Yeah, so let's make it a bit let's say differently, that in the supermarkets, consumers don't have the time, or let's say the inclination to see what the stories are behind it. But as responsible retailers, we should, and we do look into the stories behind it. We also look at the accreditations behind it. I mean, I can tell you even now, I mean, we've got so many suppliers at our doorsteps who say that I got a constant supply of, let's say, organic sugar, for example. But when we go and trace them out, it's not organic sugar. Like Mike said, it might be some small portion of it, and some is mixed with it. So we just stay out of it. Not that the consumer is going to ask us, because honestly, like Mike and Monique also said, that we've got so many processes in place in Dubai. That whenever we import something, the kind of certifications that are needed and all, that will take care of it. But then we need to see what we are buying genuinely to put into our supermarket. So that is of prime importance to us. We can't sell anything to the consumer without knowing what the story is at the back. Just to give you an example, just because Gurumahesh is on the panel, I'll tell you, when Jackys came up with this idea, we were also a bit worried of how it's going to work. I mean, an electronics guy is going into organic foods. So then we also had this discussion with them, how are they doing it? But then when we came to know how they're doing it, and what is their source, it is only then that we have approved them. It's not that we can put anything onto it. But to answer your question on what you asked us, definitely consumers don't actually look for it. But it's our responsibility to make sure that it's real.
Guru, is that your experience as well, that consumers don't look for the story behind the product? Or
see, first of all, how we do, as rightly said Mr. Kirti, that we first investigate of the brand which we are launching, as he does what he is keeping on the shelf. So we visit the stores, we visit the factory where the products are, the manufacturers, where the packing facilities are there. We also get the reviews of the products before we, in fact, launch the brand in the market. So we are sure that, where customer also, if they want to find out about the brand, they will definitely get a positive feedback. That is one thing. Second thing, definitely customers or buyers will definitely come back to that product after using it. Hello?
Sorry, go on, Guru.
Yeah. So definitely the customer definitely looks into it, where people who wants to know the product, who wants to know the brand before consuming. But again, they will do it and their free time. It's not like when they're in the shelf, they will not do then, but when they buy it, definitely they do. They do a little research, where people who are more of savvy people, they would like to know the product, what they're consuming. But at the point of buying, definitely they might not know, but later on, definitely they'll do.
True.
Technology is very reliable when you need it the most. Does seem like it, but Mike, what are your thoughts on the same? Do you think consumers are asking for it? Do you think it's important for you as a retailer to educate your customers and tell them what the story is behind the products?
Look, I think Kirti answered the question. So I think that there's a fine balance between the information you can get over to a customer, during the shopping trip and what they need. I think customers want, in first instance, want to understand that what they're buying is, what they're paying for. So they do want to understand that. I think more and more what we'll see is, I think we will see consumers more and more want to be treated as individuals, and as individuals they will form in relationships with brands, and I don't think that the large consumer brands can offer that personalization that a small brand will be. I think more and more we'll see people move, in the post-pandemic world to alliance to mission-based businesses. So businesses that are just not solely about making profit, but businesses that are invested in the community and in and positive actions towards regeneration of the environment as well. So long explanation, but I think consumers want information. They don't have that much time during the shopping experience. Therefore, I think the opportunity is to create relationships with through kind of small offerings, and then using that as a basis to communicate to the customer outside the shopping experience.
All right. Coming to the supply chain part of organic and natural products, considering that a large amount of these products are not really manufactured in the region or in the UAE, they need to be imported. What are your thoughts on what can suppliers do to establish relationships or maybe use technology to sort of ensure the constant supply of these products to their end users? At all times, we have seen that the pandemic has caused a lot of supply chain issues. And so what are your thoughts on these? How do you think suppliers and importers, exporters as well can solve some of these issues? Kirti, you can, if you have any thoughts to share on that.
No, really, I wouldn't get into maybe answering this question, because my knowledge on the supply chain of brands, because we usually work with suppliers like Jackys and or let's say even for that matter 24 Mantra, but they all of them see, because these are all they're just all natural produce. We don't know when how the back of that works, because they need to, let's say, take the case of, let's say, 24 Mantra, or the way the farming happens in India. It is, I mean, it's a huge let's say backward integration that works there. So of course, we cannot foresee any, or let's say, non-interruption part, within that. So honestly, this is not something that maybe I can answer. Maybe Guru, I don't know whether you can, or how you have built your brand on this.
Supply chain has been issue, like we have experiences. I mean, as I said, we just started during pandemic, and we had challenges due to the time, due to our availability of vessels, due to availability of manpower at the production, and we had a lot of issues. But still, now I think things are in pipeline. Everything is going in a smooth line. But yeah, during pandemic we had these issues, but somehow we had cope up, and we were able to deliver the food on the shelf. So otherwise, supply chain will have a lot of implication when it comes to organic, and depends on supply and demand. As and when the demand increases, the vessels, I mean, we keep getting so. As we never faced a challenge post-pandemic. Actually, initially we had that issue.
I mean, I think that's been one of the key issues globally in terms of supply chain. I was in Europe until this morning, and there again, they're also having supply chain issues. I think that's becoming the norm, and will be for the next foreseeable future. But taking the conversation to a slightly different level, I think one of the things that we find very interesting is what's the level of innovation in organic, because what we see and what we understand is that the consumer is constantly evolving, because the consumer constantly wants new products. So what do you see as the next trend or the next wave in organic and natural products? Guru, let's ask you, because you're obviously very good at finding gaps.
There are always innovative products now. I'm sure now the new generation is coming with a lot of new innovation products. I mean, you must be going through a lot of things, like meat-based, plant-based meat, right. And you talk about millets. You're talking about various stuff which used to be our ancient time, which we used to. So it's all coming into a new form, in a new. I would say in a millet range, which used to be an ancient, where it's a very common food, no? But again, those ranges coming into a cookies, they're coming into a noodles, they're coming into a soups. So they're replacing, they're coming back to this with a new form, which is nowadays it's an easy form of consuming food, right? So those are the innovations which is happening across the world, not only in India. I mean, as I said, now next is a plant-based meat, they're converting. So there's the next thing which is going to happen. I mean, everywhere.
I mean, actually, plant-based food has had a tremendous growth. And of course, a growing proportion of that's natural, organic. And we also seen a number of very well-established F&B chains that have taken on plant-based products to cater for the growing needs. Kirti, at Joytrons, what do you see as the next wave of organic and natural products?
I answer this in a different way. Organic and natural products are there to stay. Okay, it's only organic and natural products will just replace the mainstream products. You can have a biscuit, and then you can have an organic biscuit, or you can have, let's say, rice, and you can have an organic rice. That's how it's going to replace it per se. It'll just take you to the next level. What is going to change within the health category? Like I said earlier, organic is just part of the health category. What is going to change in health is huge. The trends are, people want to have keto food. People want to have, let's say, vegan.
Right.
People want to have a low carb food. These are the trends. Organic is never going to become a trend as such, because organic is going to evolve anyway. But it'll just be like replacing your normal thing into an organic thing. But like you rightly touched upon, vegan is something that is catching up a lot. Again, the reasons are the same, or not the same, or let's say almost the same, because veganism is also linked very much to the environment and sustainability. People are linking, and people are understanding that part of veganism, other than health issues. I mean, yes, people are moving to veganism because of health issues, but also they understand the environmental, let's say, impact onto it. So I think the next we just have to now wait for the next trends to start, and then it'll all be part of the health food.
Yes, I certainly agree with you there. I think we have to wait for the next health, and I've got some ideas which I'll discuss in a minute. But before that, let's go to Mike. Mike, I mean, in your area,
I've lots of stuff to say on this topic, actually. Yeah, I have a lot of stuff. I want to break it down into two areas. So I think, what are the next health trends, and then what we need. So if I can split it into two parts. So I think, from my perspective, I think we'll see a lot more combination of organic with functional, which Kirti kind of touched on. So I think keto for me is an area which I think will, it's been there, but vegan has been, the star of the last couple of years. But I think keto, in terms of product availability, will come through. I think the other thing that will get more focus is nutraceuticals. So more combination of products in order to proactively help people stave off illness or enhance their health. We certainly see a massive growth in the market of general vitamins, etc. And what we'll see is we'll start to see more of that integration of thinking into foods. One of the other key themes that I'll say, which sits alongside organic or any of these other categories, is more focus on packaging. So consumers will demand more in terms of the way that product is packaged, so more focused on environmentally friendly packaging. And then I think you'll see more combination of products coming through. So I think I would describe, most of the product that's supplied in organic at the moment is single variety, if I may call it that. So single item, but more combinations. And I think one of the best categories I could use to talk on that would be, like, for example, teas. So teas at the moment, is predominantly focused on single blend, but more and more we'll see coming through more exotic blends of product that show a uniqueness rather than a commodity type structure in product. What we need is, so that was what I think will happen, but what we really need is we need more artisan producers that are based closer, if not in the region. And when I say producer, I mean people that are able to actually create product with craft. So too much of, in my opinion, of organic product in the market at the moment is commodity driven. So pulses, grains, items where there's no artistry or craft in the development of the product. We've got, sourcing based on supply chain, basic products with brand established by a label. And I think what we need is more people that do justice to the product in developing it into craft products and beautiful food to eat. Because one of the other benefits of organic or natural that we haven't talked about is how great the flavor is, how great the consistency is, and the superiority quality of the product that's grown without chemicals.
I think that's a very interesting point you make there, because the more you move away from a commodity and a homogeneous product, the more variety you get, and the more historical varieties start steaming up. And I think that's really what we need. But I think you also touched on a very important issue, which is the idea that there'll be a lot more blending, because now we see that already. We see chia seeds added into other foods. We see quinoa added into other foods. So there's a blending of organic foods with superfoods, etc. Do you see that happening a lot more? And also, do you see a lot of new natural varieties that have not been grown for 100 years or so, popping up because people want to get away from the bland, tasting fruits and vegetables to something which is more local tasting stuff?
Yeah, I mean, like in the States, there's definitely a resurgence of ancient grains coming through the organic space. So absolutely, on the high-end restaurants in America as well, you would see a lot more of the of crops planted that are sort of are high-end, in organic and heirloom in terms of variety. So I think you're right. If we were to talk about superfoods, for example, if we look back 4 or 5 years, you would have probably seen coming into this market single variety superfoods. I think where that market has moved to and is moving again is we've seen a kind of slowdown on maturity of the single variety superfoods, and what we've started to see again is that combination of superfoods, or it muddled into a format that makes sense. So, for example, a smoothie bomb, or some other type of item that adds not only the nutritional benefit of the product but the convenience for the consumer in using it.
Monique, I'd like to ask you this question in a slightly different way, because one of the things that I've seen is actually organic edible cutlery, right? As a form of innovation. So it's getting away from the plastics. So you actually have cutlery that you actually eat at the end of it. And you see cups, which are again edible. So you drink your tea or your coffee, and then you can actually eat the cup. And do you see this as a way of actually another way that organic food will innovate, Monique?
Yes, definitely. It's something that I've tried also here in Dubai during Expo. So we had this food security expo. Yeah, so it's like a win-win situation. Like there is no waste, and then we also get to enjoy the food. We also get to eat not just the food itself, but also the packaging. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually very interesting. It's actually the packaging is organic but edible. So it's the food itself. And that also leads me to another aspect, which is really, are we looking for organic plus labels as well? I mean, do we want products which are organic and halal, organic and fair trade, organic and net zero, right? I mean, have we reached a stage where organic is not enough, but we need more?
Yes, definitely, because as mentioned also earlier, like consumer tastes and preferences are evolving, and we always look for what's the best for us. So as I've also mentioned earlier, we're not looking at just physical health, we're also looking at mental health, we're also looking at gut health, we're also looking at our food that would enhance our sleeping patterns. So definitely there would be like opportunities, or there would be expectations to have like all of this additional plus, especially with sustainability, because consumers are scrutinizing the environmental footprints of products. And this is also driving the organic and naturally healthy food and the eco label. So the climate crisis and the animal welfare are topics of great importance for young consumers in developed as well as developing markets. So, back also to your question earlier about the opportunities or what else are what's next also for the organic food. Another thing is, as I mentioned earlier, like there is a huge there was a boost for baby food, so we also expect this generation to carry on, eating or consuming organic food. So once they become, as babies, then they become toddlers, they become young children. We expect these products to have the organic range as they grow up, and also on that same idea. The younger generation, they are more scrutinizing these labels, these sustainability efforts. So this is the market that has a bigger potential. They're more, they do their research very well. So that's on one hand, and on the other hand, the older generation, I would say, they are the ones that need to have more to be more educated with, because they are coming from perhaps like a different background or a different understanding of food. So so there should be like there are different there are like different levels of education depending also on the age group as well as the socioeconomic status of consumers.
I mean, that's certainly a very good point. And I'd like to go to you, Kirti. I mean, are your customers the smartphone users, the millennials that Monique is talking about, who immediately Google things, and as a result of which they actually want greater level of information? They go into this label hunting process when they're shopping. Do you find that, Kirti?
Well, that is true for all the categories, not only for organic food. Because Joytrons is known to have new products very fast on its shelves. So you could see whenever you walk into our store, you see a new product which might not be available in any of the stores, which we might be importing it or maybe getting it by air. But yes, I think that the new generation and also maybe the older generation are connected very well, and they know what's happening in the world of food, and also, let's say, non-food. For example, which is the latest organic shampoo, for example. It's not only about food. Anything to do non-food, even skincare, for example, or a toothpaste, they know what it is, and then when they walk into the store, they look for it, and then they try and get that whatever that product is. So yes, I think somewhere maybe Mike mentioned it. Someone did say that it's not about how people are connected in social media or something. I don't know who said it, but I would rather disagree on that. People are connected. Social media plays a huge role nowadays in influencing people into what to buy, and what is the latest trend, for example. So I think yes, people do look at their phones, they look at the tweets, they look at Instagram stories, reels, whatever they are posted, and accordingly they try and look for these products into our stores. And of course, most of the products are available. If it is an innovative product, especially organic or anything to do with health, it is quite possible that you find it in our store.
Good. Do you find that the young, in fact, not as Kirti said, not only the young, the connected consumer is searching particular labels and particular type of products, be they fair trade, be they net zero?
No, come again?
I mean, do you find that the connected consumer, the consumer with a smartphone, is not only just looking for natural organic products, but natural and organic plus? So products which are fair trade or net zero, have certain ESG.
Now, now you know technology has given a platform for them to check anything. They always want to check. They always want to check what is after not only organic. So they can check within a fraction of a second. They can check every detail of that product. I mean, every brand or anything. It can be a prices, it can be the rating, it can be a Google. So definitely, social media has been a platform. I mean, today, if one example, suppose if I want to buy something, I want to know before buying that product. Okay, what are the reviews of the product? Well, what is the rating of the product? Can I buy this? Can I spend that money? So social media is definitely is a part of it. Now, since now a lot of shopping is being online, right? I mean, it is shifting to online. So before people buying online, they have a choice then and there to check the review of the product and just place an order.
Okay, Mike, I mean, you're at the other end of the value chain. Do you find that, when people buy your kind of products, they want certain reassurances, not only of organic and natural, but there's no forced labor, there's no child labor, all those kind of good credentials?
Look, I think customers want to buy from brands they can trust. So one of the reasons that Ripe has been able to expand, and while we partner with most of the major supermarkets in UAE, is because customers know that we don't take any shortcuts. They can trust us in integrity. So I think Ripe, if we talk about Ripe specifically, I think it's it's a love brand. I think the association, we have two associations. So we do the community farmer markets and the social events. So supporting artisan brands and market. And then we have the distribution business focus on fresh. So we haven't gone deep enough, or we've not needed to, or we've chosen not to go deep into topics such as cruelty, child labor, and those things, because I think at the moment, the consumer, we need to focus on the education of the basics that I talked about earlier. So again, customers understanding organic, understanding the supply chain, understanding the benefits, the net carbon neutral benefits of organic farming versus versus conventional, the fact that there's no petrochemicals involved. There's so much that the customers need to understand just on the facet of organic, that going into some of these issues, at this stage, we haven't invested in it, but that's not to say that they're very important issues. But for the UAE consumer, my view is they're not ready for that level of information.
Wonderful. I think we're rapidly running out of time. So just before we finish, what I'd like to ask each of the panelists is a 30-second parting words. Let's start off with you, Monique. Just 30 seconds, parting words.
Yeah, I think with the pandemic that has happened, people are more conscious, more aware of health issues. And so the organic and natural products are here to stay. And we expect consumers to look more into these labels, to look more on how to make themselves healthier.
Wonderful. So natural and organic, here to stay, here to grow, and labels are important. Mike.
Education, coordination, cooperation, integrity. Everyone that's involved in the industry has a role to play in making sure that the industry grows in the right way. It's a bright future for the industry. There is the demand, but without everyone playing their part in ensuring those things that I mentioned, it won't progress in the way that I think it needs to.
Wonderful. 4 very, very important words there. Excellent. Kirti.
Like I said even earlier, I think it's all about health. So organic falls within the health section in our stores, and we'll have to look out for more trends. There was something that you also mentioned, that is there any crossover? Are people looking at multiple things at one time? Maybe something that's organic and also free from, or it's organic and it's keto. So I think that's also going to grow. And I absolutely agree with Mike. I mean, without integrity, this business is going nowhere.
Excellent. So integrity and organic plus.
Health.
Wonderful. Health, yeah, and health as well. Guru?
Get educated, be healthy, live a healthy lifestyle, and convert to organic.
So there you go, conversion and a healthy lifestyle. Wonderful words. So this leaves me to thank my wonderful panelists for a wonderful and highly informative, lively discussion. I think we've covered quite a lot of ground in a short space of time. And it's been really, really amazing. And we've also been able to take some of the some of the audience questions. So I'd like to thank my panelists, Monique, Mike, Kirti, and Guru. Thank you so much for a wonderful session.